A movie so scandalous it required court permission for nudity, a poster so provocative they had to airbrush a new version, and a production so nightmarish the director called it horrendous. This is Blame It on Rio, the film that ended Stanley Donen's career and shocked even 1980s audiences. Buckle up. Fact 1. The 17-year-old star needed court permission to get naked.
I've never spent the whole night with anyone.
Mickey must be home by now.
Michelle Johnson was 17 when she was cast as Jennifer, not 18, not playing younger, actually 17 years old, and her role required full frontal nudity in multiple scenes. So what do you do when you want a minor to appear naked in your Hollywood movie? You go to court, literally. The production had to get special parental consent and permission from a judge to allow Johnson's nude scenes. They filed legal paperwork, they made their case to a courtroom. A judge had to officially approve a teenager getting naked for Michael Caine. But here's the kicker. Johnson didn't even know about the nudity when she was cast. She found out after signing on. "My parents were a bit concerned about it, and I was too," she said. "I always wanted to have a career in film, and I wanted to make the right moves at the right time." Wrong moves, Michelle. Very wrong moves. Fact 2. The movie poster was too sexy for America.
It is better making love to someone when you're not married.
The original theatrical poster featured Michelle Johnson from behind in a Brazilian-cut bikini, basically a thong. And apparently, 1984. America wasn't ready for that level of cheek exposure. The poster caused such an uproar that the studio panicked. They quickly commissioned an altered, airbrushed version with a less revealing bikini. Same girl, same pose, but now with more fabric digitally painted over her rear end. So we had a movie about a middle-aged man having an affair with a teenager, and what scandalized people? The bikini on the poster. Not the pedophilic undertones, not the moral bankruptcy. The swimsuit was too small. This perfectly captures 1980s priorities. Statutory relationships are fine for entertainment, but God forbid we show too much butt cheek in the marketing materials. The American moral compass. Everyone. Fact 3. Stanley Donen called the production horrendous. Stanley Donen, the man who directed Singin' in the Rain and won an honorary Oscar, described making this movie as horrendous. Not challenging, not difficult, horrendous. The production was the first foreign film to operate under new Brazilian government guidelines, which meant endless bureaucratic nightmares. They required excessive personal information from cast and crew. It rained constantly on days when the forecast promised sunshine. Goods, products, and services arrived late or didn't arrive at all. Donen was trying to capture the romance and beauty of Rio de Janeiro, but instead he got bogged down in permit applications and soggy equipment. Every day was a bureaucratic battle just to film middle-aged men ogling teenagers on the beach. The irony is perfect. A movie about moral corruption gets corrupted by actual reality. Sometimes the universe has a sense of humor. Fact 4. Demi Moore chose this over. Supergirl.
What's the matter?
I think I'm getting strep throat. I have to get in her.
Young Demi Moore had two offers on the table. Play Lucy Lane in Supergirl or appear in Blame It on Rio. One was a superhero franchise with potential sequels. The other was a creepy sex farce about statutory relationships. Moore chose the sex farce. She literally turned down a comic book movie to get topless in Brazil with Michael Caine and a teenage girl. Now, Supergirl turned out to be a disaster, so maybe Moore made the right call financially. But imagine explaining this to your grandchildren. Well, I could have played Superman's cousin, but instead I decided to be in a movie where a grown man sleeps with his best friend's high school daughter. The 1980s were a different time. But even by 1980s standards, this feels like a questionable career move. Then again, Moore's career turned out fine. So what do we know? Fact 5. Michelle Johnson didn't know who.
Jennifer!
Michael Caine was when 17-year-old Michelle Johnson was called in to audition. She had no idea she'd be screen testing with one of Britain's most respected actors. She literally didn't know who Michael Caine was. This was so embarrassing, she said in an interview when the film was released. She walked into the audition room expecting to meet some random actor and instead found herself face to face with the star of Alfie, The Italian Job, and Sleuth. But here's what makes it even more awkward. Caine had known her character since she was supposedly a baby in the movie's backstory. So Johnson is meeting this legendary actor for the first time, while he's supposed to be playing someone who's watched her grow up. The real-life dynamic perfectly mirrors the creepy movie dynamic, an inexperienced teenager being manipulated by a much older, much more powerful man in the entertainment industry. Art imitating life, imitating art. Fact 6. The first foreign film under new Brazilian guidelines.
This can make you crazy.
I think the monkey likes you.
Blame It on Rio holds the dubious honor of being the first foreign production to film in Brazil under the country's new government guidelines. They were basically guinea pigs for Brazilian bureaucracy. Nobody knew how the new system worked. The Brazilian officials were learning on the job, and so was the Hollywood crew. Every permit, every location, every piece of equipment became a diplomatic negotiation. The irony? Brazil was trying to attract international productions with these new guidelines, and their very first attempt was this moral dumpster fire. Imagine being the Brazilian Tourism Board. Come film in our beautiful country. Our first Hollywood production is about an old man having sex with a teenager. You can almost hear the Brazilian officials watching the finished product and thinking, maybe we should have read the script first. Fact 7. Demi Moore had a secret affair with a crew member. While the movie focuses on Michael Caine's character having an inappropriate relationship, the real scandal was happening behind the cameras. In her memoir, Inside Out, Demi Moore revealed she ended up sleeping with a young member of the crew. The crew member was described as Peter, a young guy who was running the second unit camera on the movie, believed to be Peter Lyons Collister. So while they were filming a story about questionable age gap relationships, Moore was having her own age gap relationship with someone on set. The meta-narrative is incredible. A movie about inappropriate attractions features actual inappropriate attractions happening during production. Everyone was apparently infected by the moral corruption of the script. Moore was 20, so it was legal, but it's still weird that a movie about sexual boundary violations seemed to inspire sexual boundary violations. The whole production was cursed by its own subject matter. Boundary violations. The whole production was cursed by its own subject matter. Fact 8. Michelle Johnson was picked from 300 candidates. Despite zero acting experience, Stanley Donen auditioned 300 girls for the role of Jennifer, 300, and he picked the one with absolutely no acting experience. Michelle Johnson was a model who had literally never acted in anything. Not community theater, not high school plays, not even a commercial. She was chosen purely on looks, because Donen saw her photo in a fashion magazine and became captivated. This explains so much about why her performance feels wooden and unconvincing. She's not playing a character. She's a beautiful teenager trying to figure out how to pretend to seduce Michael Caine while dozens of crew members watch. The really disturbing part? Donen was upfront about the nudity requirements, which scared away established actresses. So he ended up with an inexperienced teenager who didn't understand what she was getting into. The casting process itself feels exploitative. Fact 9. The movie includes a scene from 1933's Flying Down to Rio. In the middle of this 1984 sex farce, Donen inexplicably includes a black and white clip from the 1933 movie Flying Down to Rio, specifically the famous wing-walking sequence set to Rio by the CO. Critics called this the worst mistake in the entire movie. Here's this gorgeous classic Hollywood sequence full of grace and elegance, dropped into a sleazy comedy about statutory relationships. The contrast is jarring. It's like watching someone vandalize their own masterpiece. Donen was essentially saying, "Remember when I made beautiful, innocent movies? Well, here's what I'm doing now." The clip serves as an unintentional commentary on how far both Donen and Hollywood had fallen. From aerial ballet to beach exploitation in just 50 years. Progress, everyone. Fact 10. Joseph Bologna appeared in both 1984. Boudoir farce. 1984 was apparently the year of middle-aged men behaving badly because Joseph Bologna managed to appear in both major boudoir farces of the year. Blame It on Rio and The Woman in Red. Both movies featured older men having midlife crisis affairs. Both were R-rated sex comedies. Both starred Bologna as the neurotic friend who creates complications. He basically cornered the market on sexually frustrated middle-aged sidekick. But here's the weird part. Bologna was actually funny in The Woman in Red. His performance there has energy and timing. In Blame It on Rio, he looks embarrassed and uncomfortable, like he knows he's in a career-damaging movie. Maybe by the time Blame It on Rio was released, Bologna had seen the writing on the wall. Or maybe the subject matter just made everyone involved feel dirty. Fact 11. The film made Michael Caine. Embarrassed for the first time, Michael Caine has been in some truly terrible movies. Jaws, The Revenge, The Swarm, The Island. But according to observers on set and critics who reviewed it, Blame It on Rio was the first time anyone had ever seen Michael Caine look genuinely embarrassed by his own performance. Caine built his career on professionalism. He famously said he'd give his best performance no matter how bad the material. But something about this production broke through his legendary composure. Multiple reviews mentioned how embarrassed and stricken all the actors looked, but Caine was particularly uncomfortable. Maybe it was the age gap with his co-star. Maybe it was working with an inexperienced teenager. Maybe it was just recognizing that his association with this movie would haunt him forever. For an actor who once said, "I have never seen a script I didn't like," that's saying something. Fact 12. The movie's tagline was, "What's so funny about making love to your best friend's daughter?" Sometimes the marketing department tells you everything you need to know about a movie's problems. The official tagline was, "What's so funny about making love to your best friend's daughter?" Ask Michael Caine? Just read that again. What's so funny about making love to your best friend's daughter? The marketing team looked at this movie and decided the best way to sell it was by directly asking audiences to find humor in statutory relationships. They literally put the moral problem in the tagline and dared people to laugh about it. Other taglines included, "You can blame the night, blame the wine, blame the moon in her eyes, but when all else fails, you'd better blame it on Rio," because apparently, the city of Rio de Janeiro causes middle-aged men to lose their moral compass. Geography as an excuse for pedophilia. That's a new one. Fact 13. It was based on a respected French film. Here's the thing that makes Blame It on Rio even more tragic. It was based on a genuinely good French film. Un Moment d'Égarement, 1977, directed by Claude Berry, was a thoughtful, nuanced exploration of the same premise. The French version treated the subject matter with psychological complexity and moral ambiguity. It was about how people can briefly lose their minds, the literal translation of the title, and make choices that destroy relationships. But something got lost in translation, specifically the intelligence. The French film was a character study. The American version became a TNA comedy with slapstick sequences and leering camera work. It's like someone took the 400 Blows and turned it into Porky's. Same basic story, completely different artistic vision. The French must have watched this adaptation and wondered what exactly Americans think is funny about human suffering. Fact 14. Demi Moore strategically used her hair to avoid full nudity. While Michelle Johnson was getting fully naked in scene after scene, Demi Moore had a different approach to the film's nudity requirements. She went topless, but used the strategic placement of her long hair to hide anything that would push the movie beyond an R rating, and it's incredibly obvious. Moore's hair defies physics throughout her topless scenes, somehow always perfectly positioned to cover her breasts. It's like watching someone perform magic tricks with follicles. Critics noted how calculated and unnatural her coverage looked, especially compared to Johnson's uninhibited nudity. Moore was clearly uncomfortable with the material, but contractually obligated to appear partially nude. The contrast between the two actresses perfectly captures the movie's weird sexual dynamics. The older, more experienced Moore protecting herself, while the teenage newcomer gets fully exploited. Even the nudity becomes a metaphor for power imbalances. Fact 15. The movie ends. Stanley Donen's theatrical career. Blame It on Rio wasn't just bad, it was career-ending bad. This was Stanley Donen's final theatrical film, marking the end of a 35-year career that included some of Hollywood's greatest musicals. Donen went from Singin' in the Rain to this, from Gene Kelly to Naked Teenagers, from timeless classics to 1980s exploitation. The man who defined Hollywood elegance ended his theatrical career with a movie about statutory rape played for laughs. After Blame It on Rio, Donen only directed one episode of Moonlighting, one music video, Lionel Richie's Dancing on the Ceiling, and one made-for-TV movie. He essentially vanished from Hollywood. In 1998, he received an honorary Oscar for a body of work marked by grace, elegance, wit, and visual innovation. The Academy carefully avoided mentioning his final film. Some career endings deserve to be forgotten. Fact 16. The beach nudity was filmed on non-topless beaches. The movie features several scenes of casual topless sunbathing, suggesting this was normal Brazilian beach culture. But there's a problem. They filmed on Ipanema Beach, which not only isn't a topless beach, but where topless sunbathing is actually prohibited. So all those authentic Brazilian beach scenes showing liberated nudity, completely fabricated. The production basically created fake nude beach culture to justify their story. This means they brought topless extras to a beach where topless sunbathing was illegal, filmed them breaking local laws, then presented this as authentic Brazilian lifestyle, cultural imperialism at its finest. The local authorities must have been thrilled. American filmmakers come to Brazil and immediately start violating public decency laws for their sleazy movie. What a great first impression for those new filmmaking guidelines. Fact 17. Michelle Johnson's first day nude was pure terror. According to Johnson herself, the first time she had to take her clothes off and stand naked in front of the cast and mostly male crew was absolutely terrifying. It was like hundreds of eyes were all staring at her exposed body. But she found a coping mechanism: method acting. When I was being Jennifer, when I was really focused in on that character, I wasn't aware that I was topless or completely naked in those scenes. That was the last thing on my mind, because I was so focused. However, the moment Stanley Donen yelled, "Cut!" reality crashed back. I was immediately aware that I was standing in front of 20 or 30 people with no clothes on, and I picked up a robe and ran to my room. This is heartbreaking. A 17-year-old girl coping with exploitation by dissociating from her own body. The behind-the-scenes reality was probably more psychologically damaging than anything shown on screen. Fact 18. Roger Ebert called it sleaze with first-rate talents. Roger Ebert's review was absolutely scathing, giving the movie 1 star and calling it disturbing sleaze. But what really bothered him wasn't just the movie, It was the talent involved. What's shocking is how many first-rate talents are associated with this sleaze, Ebert wrote. The director is Stanley Donen of Singin' in the Rain. The man having the affair is Michael Caine, one of my favorite actors. Ebert understood that bad movies happen, but this was different. These weren't desperate, unknown filmmakers trying to break into Hollywood. These were established artists with reputations willingly participating in something morally questionable. His review reads like a disappointed teacher scolding star students who got caught cheating. The real tragedy wasn't the movie's badness. It was watching respected artists destroy their own legacies. Fact 19. The film grossed $18 million despite universal hatred. Despite being universally panned by critics and morally condemned by audiences, Blame It on Rio somehow managed to gross $18.6 million at the box office. It opened with $3.4 million in its first weekend. This proves an uncomfortable truth. Controversy sells. People went to see it precisely because it was scandalous. The moral outrage became free marketing. But here's the really depressing part. $18 million was considered a disappointment. The studio expected the combination of Michael Caine, nude teenagers, and Brazilian beaches to make serious money. They were banking on America's appetite for sleaze. The fact that it made any money at all suggests there was an audience for this content. Somewhere out there, people were buying tickets to watch Michael Caine have sex with a high school student. That's the most disturbing fact of all. Fact 20. The movie predicted its own legacy. In one of the film's direct-to-camera monologues, Michael Caine's character delivers a line that accidentally predicted the movie's entire legacy. I've always had a problem with nudity. Sometimes, when I'm getting undressed, I almost wish I could leave the room. Know what I mean? This perfectly captures how everyone involved probably felt about the finished product. They all wanted to leave the room and pretend they weren't part of this disaster. But the most prophetic line comes earlier, when Caine says, "It's like asking an arsonist to become the fire chief." That's exactly what happened. They put the people responsible for good filmmaking in charge of creating something that would burn down their own careers. Blame It on Rio is a masterclass in how talented people can create something that embarrasses everyone involved. Sometimes the most revealing thing about a movie isn't what it shows on screen, but what it reveals about the people who made it.